Hello, you're here with T,
And Matthew.
and we are the Bing Zang Zoom podcast. Episode 18, Quarantine 5. Goodness gracious. We're here. All right, we're 18. We're legal now, you know? we can
Depends on what we want to do.
Yeah, right. Yeah, this is true. This is true.
Can't rent a car yet.
Yeah. Can't go anywhere. But we can't go anywhere anyway, so yeah, you know. So we got this the Bruce Lee 30 for 30 coming up, right? Well, first of all, are you a big fan of Bruce Lee? Let the people know.
yeah. Of course I am a big fan of Bruce Lee. I grew up on his movies, and I'm a martial artist, not a good one, but still. And currently I'm studying Wing Chun, which was Bruce Lee's first style, the one that he was officially trained in. So yeah, Bruce Lee has a big impact on my life for sure.
Yeah, same here, man. My dad had this book that the only book that we could not just go in and touch was the Bruce Lee book, describing what moves to do, and he's like, it's good knowledge to have, but it's also dangerous knowledge to have. So if you want to read that book, you have to ask. Yes, and not to mention the fact that he doesn't want us ripping through that book like we were ripped through our comics. Like, what's next? Oh, what happens next? Just kids. So yeah, Bruce Lee has definitely had a huge influence on my life as well. I must ask, when it comes down to it, Bruce Lee or Chuck Norris? What do you got?
Well, Chuck Norris was primarily trained in the Korean art called Ting Sudo. But that being said, he did study under Bruce Lee for a little while, studied Jeet Kune Do under Bruce Lee. So that's like saying the student or the master.
Right, yeah. I feel you there. See, but that's just to give some insight, I'm not gonna lie, I figured that you would lean towards Bruce a little bit there, but I knew you would have the answer as to why, and that right there lets all of our listeners know that whole Bruce Chuck, that's the answer right there. Student of the master. I mean, but how you feel about this 30 for 30 coming up on the 7th?
Yeah, I'm very interested in it. Bruce Lee is such a wide, dynamic person. Like, you could like his philosophy and his writings, you could like his movies, you could just think he's a good martial artist, but he really did have a big impact on particularly martial arts as a sport. A lot of the creation of MMA as a thing, is commonly credited to Bruce Lee, because he was one of the first people in the West, and to that extent, that added different styles and put them together. Of course, he did that to create his own style, Jeet Kune Do, not just calling it MMA. But the funny thing about MMA is, back in the day, the reason why people always only did one style was because that's what was practiced in their town. Like, right. Oh, this is our village's style. And when somebody would leave their village and then pick up another style and pick up another style, they wouldn't say, I practice this, this, and this, or I do MMA. They would just rename it their own thing. But that was back in the day when that was hard to do. Nowadays, you could study 8, 9, 10 styles throughout your lifetime and it not be a big deal, right? So not everybody can say, oh, well, now mine is, whatever, right?
This is the best.
Yeah, exactly. So Bruce Lee was kind of the first person that brought that to the zeitgeist of, oh, well, you could do more than one thing and then put it together into something new. So not the first person in history, but the first person to bring it to popularity.
Bruce Lee definitely had a wide influence for a lot of different people for different things. You think even his philosophy alone, like, imagine if he was never such a fighter or known for that, right? If he's just known for his philosophy alone, things like be water, be fluid, go with the flow. Like, he's influenced a lot of culture that maybe some people don't realize that he is the one of the main influences for, like MMA, for example. You have a lot of MMA guys that are like, well, who's Bruce Lee? What has he done? And then other MMA guys are like, what? He's the reason that MMA exists. He's the reason that, I got into the sport or whatever the case may be. So, hats off to Bruce Lee. I can't wait to see this 30 for 30, man. Big things where that's concerned. Now, speaking of big things, right? Sony's done something.
Yeah. So Sony has been putting out these what they're calling, or what some people are calling, their Venomverse movies, right? Because Sony has the rights to the Spider-Man characters, but they've not really been in the MCU. But with Morpheus, it looks like they're saying that they're in the MCU, but that's unclear. So they're still calling them the Venomverse right now, or the Sonyverse. They just announced 2 new movies. They announced Madam Web, which is most likely going to be starring Charlize Theron. And then they've announced Jackpot is going to be the other one, which is a very small, minor Spider-Man character. But nonetheless, we're going to have 2 new Sony Marvel movies that are seemingly going to be taking place in the MCU. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah. And just the prospects, the things that could potentially happen as a result of this, that leaves an open field. You never know. But I've never heard of Jackpot before.
No, she's a super, super minor character. But, so were Guardians of the Galaxy before, that happened, right? Iron Man wasn't even really that popular of a character before the movie came out. I mean, he was always around, but nobody would call themselves an Iron Man fan,
I mean, they tried, Marvel tried with a lot of the cartoons and stuff like that to boost popularity in certain for certain characters. Silver Surfer, Hulk, Iron Man, Spider-Man, of course, was one of the more popular ones, in X-Men. As far as the cartoon took the cake, some of the movies kind of dulled that down, but it is what it is. But yeah, I would definitely like to see, as much as they can work with. I just want to get the politics out the way and kind of see what they can do with in the future with what they have, the characters that they do have.
Yeah, it's interesting, like you said, the politics between Sony and Marvel Studios right now, and what takes place where, and all of this. But I liked Venom a lot. I thought Venom was a very good movie, and obviously I like both of the Tom Holland Spider-Mans. And not my favorite Spider-Mans, but I still love them. I still think they're great films. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what they could do with it. And Madam Web, for our fans who don't know who that character is, it's kind of a Spider-Man related character that's sort of cosmic and talks about destiny and the way all things in the multiverse is interwoven and all this. So they're opening up huge doors by bringing that character in.
Yeah. She's the female Bruce Lee.
There you go.
Well, we had a poll on the Bing Zang Zoom group page, right? And the poll was New Day, going into wrestling for a second, the tag team known as New Day in the WWE versus the Nation of Domination. Who would win? Who's better? The whole 9 yards, right? Overwhelmingly, the New Day won. So shout out to the New Day for that one. Now, in other wrestling news, unfortunately, we lost a former WWE superstar. He was in the tag team known as Crime Time. His name is Shad Gaspard. He drowned, unfortunately. Him and his son just got swept up by a wave, and of course they were being saved, and he told the lifeguards to save his son, and they proceeded to do so, and that was the last thing that happened before he got hit with a wave and then wasn't seen again. So shout out to him, man. He's a hero. Honestly, there was another video on the Bing Zang Zoo group page of Shad Gaspard, and apparently some guy was trying to rob the corner store or gas station where he was, rather, and Shad disarmed the guy, picked up the gun, took the guy outside, slammed the guy, and held him down, I guess, until the police came. I mean, we're talking about a hero here,
Yeah.
So my condolences to his family, and rest in peace to Shad Gaspard. Remaining in the world of sports and kind of bad situations. Anthony Smith, he's a UFC fighter, 205 pounds.
Well, just to be clear, he fights at 205 pounds. He probably walks around, a lot heavier than that.
Yeah, but he had a break-in. Somebody tried to break into his house, and he had to fight the guy off. And, it's different when you got to schedule time to fight somebody. You got to be prepared, and everything leads up to the fight. This is him waking up out of bed to a man screaming at the top of his lungs. Like, the guy had issues.
He was on drugs, too. The guy was on drugs. And he was very clearly not in his right mind. Whether that be from the drugs or be from something else going on, we don't really know. But yeah, I mean, the dude was asleep. Smith was asleep. He wasn't ready for a fight. This guy just comes into his house, and he had to fight him. And the thing is that he was saying is like, yeah, I need this guy in the face. I was, punching him. I was choking him out. I was doing all the stuff that I do in a normal fight. And this guy just kept coming at me, and that's a scary thing.
Because he fights at 205. He probably walks around heavier than that. And he said that the guy wasn't the biggest dude in the world either. He
has like 175.
Yeah, but depending upon what was in his system, that could be like he could be like a pit bull mind. He's not really concerned about his own safety. He's just
he's not feeling the pain.
Yeah, he walked into the house screaming. Is what Anthony Smith said, that he got in through the garage because they left the garage door open. They thought they had closed it. One of the simple things. It happens. But guy walks in and just starts screaming at the top of his lungs. And of course that wakes everybody up, but you're not fully aware when you first wake up. You're like,
yeah, you're always like, where am I? What time is it?
Yeah, and somebody's screaming at the top of their lungs, or you don't know what's going on. So, and then he has to go down and fight somebody before he even has his like, he's fully conscious of what is going on, why it's happening, and then there is no explanation. It's not like, hey, guy, I just walked into your house and started screaming real quick,
Yeah. Well, and first of all, let me say, thank God everybody got out of there safe. Yeah. You know what I mean? Thank God he didn't have a weapon. Thank God, nobody got seriously hurt. Even the guy himself, that the home invader, walked away relatively unscathed, all things considered. No major hospital time from my understanding. But, what I find interesting about this is there seems to be this understanding with MMA. For one thing, MMA is primarily Muay Thai standing up and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on the ground. They say, oh, MMA is mixing all martial arts. Not really. Most practitioners do those two styles. And, there's this understanding with MMA that's like, oh, if it doesn't work in the ring, it doesn't work in real life. If you can't do it in a UFC fight, then it's not real. The fact that he fought this guy who was on drugs and was kneeing him in the face and was punching him and stuff, it just reminds you that in a scenario like that, this dude doesn't care about rules and whatever. He can, grab your hair. Yeah. Right, yeah, he can grab your hair, pull you back, and do stuff like that. So, it really makes you think about, sort of self-defense and, a lot of these moves that people, oh, what is this? Well, maybe it's somebody grabbing your hair and you're double blocking their hands off of you and stuff. It makes you think about like what from traditional martial arts that's not used in UFC is still important. You know?
Because it's not the be all end all. That's not the there's self-defense, fighting for self-defense, and then there's fighting for the sport that you partake in that has rules. So his first, he fights all the time, so this is like second nature to him. But he might not be thinking, oh, I can 12-6 elbow this guy, or I can knee him while he's down and stuff like that. Just instinctively. Remember, he just woke up. He's, as far as he knows, he's in a dream. He's fighting in a dream, and not to mention, now when you go into self-defense tactics, now it's like, okay, well, now you're trying to go back in your mind. Like, all right, I got to relearn everything that I have known self-defense-wise before. Like, it's very different to fight for points and to fight for judges than it is to fight for your life. It's your adrenaline is up more because you know that this could be it. And that's one of the things he said. He said, look, I'm just going as long as I can. I'm just trying to do what I can do and make sure that my family is safe while doing it, because you never know. It doesn't matter how big or how small. When you're fighting for your life and for your family's life, that puts added pressure on you. And, kind of that plus just waking up, I think, is what kind of got to him. But not for nothing. He just had a bout against Glover Teixeira, right? And he didn't look like himself out there. And you got to think, was that something that can be attributed to the break-in? Now he's not as confident. Like, normally I hit somebody, they go down. I need somebody like that, and that's it. They can't take it, But this guy is like, makes him second guess his skills, and that's never good as a fighter. Then you're like, okay, well, do I throw this one, or should I hold back, or what do I do? And that all it takes is that split second, like, okay, I should do this. By the time you've said that in your own head, you've been struck.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like we were saying earlier, there's a difference between sports martial arts, whether that be UFC or be, Olympic Taekwondo or whatever. Yeah, and self-defense and stuff. So there seems to be this, like I said, this understanding that's like, oh, if it doesn't work in UFC, it's fake martial arts. It's not real. This is, I hope this opens up people's eyes a little bit more to thinking about things from a self-defense standpoint as opposed to just a sports standpoint. And again, there's nothing wrong with sports. Love them, but that just because it doesn't work in a sports setting doesn't mean that it's fake martial arts. So protect yourself, people, is my point.
Yeah. Try to get as well rounded as you can. If you're gonna do something, just try to. And I mean, that's not to say that those things aren't helpful. It's just
no, not at all.
The main thing is, in my eyes, get as much knowledge as you can. Why just say, oh well, that's it. That's it. I don't need anything else. If somebody says,
exactly. Don't close yourself off to something because it's fake. It doesn't work in UFC. It's fake.
Those are usually excuses when someone gets beat or something like that. It's like, that worked on me now, but see, that wouldn't work because it doesn't work in UFC. See, hey, bro, if you get your neck twisted or somebody uses a wrist lock on you, these are things that you're not really going to see too much in terms of wrist locks in the UFC, but that is something that can save your life outside. You snap somebody's wrist down and they're not prepared for it. You can make them drop whatever weapon is in their hand, what have you. Ain't nobody going into a UFC fight with a weapon. And if they are, the ref is going to feel it on them. So, that's not it. But moving on. So what's this with Batwoman? Going on with Batwoman?
So on the CW network, they have a series of interconnected DC comic book shows called the Arrowverse. It started with the show Arrow, and that's why it's called the Arrowverse. And it's sort of like the MCU, but it's on television and it's based on DC characters. One of their newer shows that started this season was Batwoman. And the interesting thing about Batwoman is it had the biggest premiere of any CW show. Like, the numbers just blew everybody out of the water. However, those numbers didn't last. Each week, they started falling pretty significantly, and towards the end of the series, they were pretty darn bad.
Yeah.
The main star, the person who plays Batwoman, is an actress named Ruby Rose, who's known more for movies, and she's been on a few Netflix shows like Orange is the New Black and such. She said she's not returning for season 2. And this is particularly interesting because most of these type of shows have a 6-year contract, meaning that if the show lasts for 6 years, the star has to stay there. If the show gets canceled after season 1, then the contract's broken, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact that the star is leaving after 1 season makes you think something more is going on behind the story.
Yeah. Man. Wow. And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there a previous attempt at Batwoman on the CW? Man. It was Bat something. No. Was it Catwoman? Batwoman? I think it was Batwoman.
You mean back in the day?
Yeah.
They had a Birds of Prey show starring the Huntress, which was Batman's daughter.
Was it that?
Yeah, that was a show for a little while.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I got you.
Yeah. So the Batwoman is about Batman's LGBT cousin. And so that's been a major, running point for the show, is that she's an LGBT character. And there's been some controversy over that because some people are saying that the actress wasn't gay enough, whatever that means. And, we'll kind of leave that at what it is. But, so they've announced, they said, whoever we get to replace her will be an LGBT member. It's unclear if they're going to recast the same character or if they're going to create a new character to make Batwoman. A lot of reports have been saying that Ruby Rose was unhappy with the work hours of the show, and that because of that, she was being not the most fun to work with. So they said it was kind of a mutual thing. However, Ruby Rose earlier in the season had a major neck injury due to a stunt gone bad and was almost crippled and had to have a life-saving surgery. And so some people are speculating that it might be due to that maybe the injury keeps flaring back up. But it's,
like you said, they're not going to let her, normally under normal circumstances, you have a 6-year contract where you're not just allowed to be let go. And I mean, nothing's come out from the studio about this?
Not really. Like I said, there's been some leaks that seem to indicate that, she was unhappy with the work hours, and because of that, she wasn't fun to work with. But really, everybody's just been saying like, oh, we hate to see her go. And she's, oh, I hate to go, but it's what I have to do. And, whatever. Which, a lot of people are saying like, well, she's an actress already. How bad could this schedule be? For those people who don't know, a standard work day on a television show, on a, not a streaming show and not a movie, but a like week-to-week television show, is a 12-hour shoot day, 5 days a week. So you're working 12 hours to shoot something. Now, let's not forget that to play a superhero, you have to work out and you have to be in shape. Probably work out about 2 hours a day with a trainer. So that goes from 12 to 14 hours. Then you have to have your choreography training, which is probably at least another hour. So that's from 14 to 15 hours a day. Then you have to drive back and forth between each set, maybe an hour each way. Suddenly you're only getting about 4 hours of sleep,
Right. Oh, man. Goodness. Yeah. And then, so if that's what the norm is, if she's saying that the schedule might have been too hectic, then that any more than that.
Even worse. Yeah, there was a show I worked on one time, and I won't say which one because I don't want to badmouth that show. But one of our shoot days, we didn't get a lunch break at all, and we were constantly shooting. There was no downtime. We shot for 17 hours because we ran over our normal 12-hour schedule. So if you can imagine shooting, if that ever happened, shooting 17 hours and then still having to get her workout in and still having to get the stunt choreography training in and still having to drive back and forth to set and home, you know?
There's only perspective moment. There's only 24 hours in a day.
Yeah.
17 of that was spent filming.
On that set that night. And it was overnight too, so it was, we were shooting at nighttime. Yeah, and again, we didn't get a lunch break or anything. They did bring some food up to us that we were able to, in between like cut, and they bring it over, we could shove it down. But there was no oh, here's an hour to sit down and eat,
Goodness, man. Well, hopefully everything works out positively. I know you are invested in that show a little bit. Or at least I've seen Ruby Rose in that show.
Yeah, I like Ruby Rose as an actress, and I love the Arrowverse in general. So
yeah, that sucks. And actually, to go back really quick, what I was thinking of was the one about that girl, Barbara. They had one like that a little while ago. Yeah, I'll have to look it up. It might. I'm not sure if it's what you're talking about. I don't think that's the case, but I'll have to look it up and probably post it on Bing Zang Zoom or something like that.
Yeah, post it in the group if you find it. I'd love to know.
Yeah. All right, so moving right along, we have some interesting news. Justice League. The Snyder edition, the Snyder cut on HBO. My brain almost exploded just saying that. The Snyder cut. Matthew, please enlighten the people and let them know what the Snyder cut means.
Okay, so with the Justice League, so DC decided to make a series of movies to kind of rival the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And it's commonly referred to as the DCEU, the DC Extended Universe. And they had several films that was leading up to the Justice League movie, Justice League being their version of like the Avengers. And during that time, the director, Zack Snyder, was terminated because Warner Brothers did not like his version of the film. So he was terminated. Before it was announced that he was terminated, very, very, very shortly after, I'm talking days after he was terminated, again, before it was announced, Zack Snyder's daughter unfortunately committed suicide, and he had to leave the project anyway. Again, he was already fired, but he would have had to leave anyway.
They said part of the reasoning wasn't part of the reasoning because it was too dark.
Yes, yeah. They felt the film was too dark, and they didn't feel like it matched the tone that they were going for. And so they brought in Joss Whedon, who was the director of the first two Avengers movies, to come in and complete the film. And a lot of fans are thinking that Zack Snyder's version of the movie would be better, so they were constantly campaigning for Zack Snyder's version of the movie to be released. After several years of this, HBO Max, the new streaming service coming out, has announced that they are going to complete Zack Snyder's version and put it out. And so that's where we're at.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've been this excited for something DC related in a while, right?
So you're pro release the Snyder's cut. Release the Snyder cut.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes. I would like to see justice done for the Justice League. Don't get me wrong, the Justice League was okay, but that's not one that I would want to be okay. I have, a lot invested towards the Justice League, especially one character in particular, Batman. And so I just want to see what else could have been done with that. But the I guess with the quarantine, the days will go by faster. But we have to wait until 2021. But
that's
it's worth the wait for me.
Yeah, that's interesting to me that you're pro Snyder Cut, because I'm actually kind of anti Snyder Cut.
Oh,
I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with them releasing it, and I'm not even going to be this person that's like, oh, it's a toxic fandom pushing. No, people are just voicing their opinion, and they've actually donated a lot of money to charity in the name of the Snyder Cut. So I'm not about that. But what I will say is that Man of Steel was the first movie in the franchise, and it did okay. You look at the reviews and everything, it did all right. And that was directed by Zack Snyder. The second one to come out, I believe, was Batman versus Superman. Mm-hmm. And that got horrible reviews. I think it's at 24% on Rotten Tomatoes, something like that. Very, very low rated, again, by Zack Snyder. Then the next one was the Suicide Squad, which Zack Snyder did not direct, but he was executive producer on, which that title could mean a lot of things. It could mean you're very heavily involved or not involved at all. We don't really know. And it's very, very, very low rated. The highest rated movie in the franchise to that point was the Justice League. It was the most well-received movie. So, don't get me wrong, it was not a great movie. It had a lot of problems to it.
Yeah. But I feel like that might have something to do with the disconnect. If Snyder began it, and then you have somebody coming in to kind of mold whatever.
It's going to be a Frankenstein. It's going to be a Frankenstein of a movie. But the fact that it was the most well-received movie, and then now everybody is like, which again still have problems, that people are like, oh, we'll release Zack Snyder's version because it's going to be better. Like that's what I keep hearing. It's going to save the movie. Why would you think that when all the other movies that came out are considered worse than Justice League? Batman versus Superman is considered one of the worst superhero movies ever made. And so people are like, oh yeah, but his version of Justice League, now that's the one that's going to save us all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe it's because, and this could be the difference between the people's perception versus the critics' perception. Now, sometimes the people and the critics don't agree. Using The Matrix as a example there. I remember the critics saying that The Matrix was nothing but a sci-fi flick that had no potential in the movie theaters, and ended up being one of the best movies ever made and influenced movies after it. Yeah.
Quite a few.
I'm not saying that any of these movies were The Matrix prior to Justice League were The Matrix, but they, to some people, myself included, were not as bad as what some critics might have them be seem like. And while Batman and Superman, there was a lot of pressure riding on the shoulders of Batman and Superman, but at the same time, that one didn't deliver. That one didn't deliver in the way that I feel like it should have. When it comes to Superman, we haven't had Superman in a while, but when you rank the Man of Steel up there with the what's that guy's name that played it in like 2006, 2007, Superman?
Runy Rose.
Yes. When you rank it up there with that one, I definitely would choose Man of Steel over Superman Returns.
I would not by any stretch of the imagination. I think Man of Steel, and this is a hot take, right? So I'm not saying that I'm right. This is just my perspective. Right. I think Man of Steel is the worst superhero movie released after the year 2000. I think it's worse than X-Men 3. I think it's worse than freaking Ghost Rider.
Hold on. What? All right. Hold on. Daredevil?
Oh yeah, way worse than Daredevil. Are you kidding me?
Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel is pretty bad. Not gonna lie, but no, I'd still say Man of Steel was worse because at least Captain Marvel was true to the comic books. It screwed up the continuity of the MCU really badly, and nobody really likes Captain Marvel in the comic books, but it was still accurate to the comic books.
Yeah.
So at least that was there.
Well, you know, everybody has their sides. I guess in this particular moment, it has more to do with who people like and kind of the tone overall. But if you want something to be done specifically, just like the people, the people, they haven't had anything to compare it to for a while. So Superman or Man of Steel coming out when it did, people were just craving a superhero movie, a Superman movie rather. And so sometimes because of that absence, it's like, oh, well, this is a breath of fresh air. For some people, it's their first Superman movie ever. They didn't see any of the other ones, the Christopher Reeves or the Superman Returns one. And me, I've seen them all. Christopher Reeves, nothing can beat. Really can beat that. That one's just time tested. But yeah.
And you know, I will say too, it makes sense from a company standpoint to release the Snyder Cut. You know, and again, I'm not, you know, like saying like, you know, how dare fans get what they want? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I don't agree with it. But you know, from a company standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. A lot of people think that the Snyder Cut, like, oh, it was completed, it was just in a basement somewhere. No, that's not the case even remotely. They are investing another $30 million into this to complete as much of the Snyder Cut as possible. That being said, with the quarantine and with the prices of the actors, they're not getting the actors back to shoot the additional scenes that were uncompleted. It's primarily going to voice actors to do some voiceover, and to the VFX studios to complete those types of things. But if people, as many people has been saying that they want this, if they subscribe to HBO Max, this is a way for them to put out a new movie for less than it costs to make a new movie, without having to film anything during quarantine. It makes perfect sense from a studio standpoint to release this.
So one of the biggest pet peeves for me was the CGI.
Yeah.
Like the movie was all right, but the CGI just kept getting on my nerves.
Wasn't great.
So now you mean to tell me there's just going to be more CGI?
There's going to be more CGI. Which, again, $30 million is what they're putting into this. And they're saying, you know, once that $30 million is used up, doesn't matter how much is complete, that's it, point blank, done. You know, but yeah, I mean, some of the actors said that, you know, they'll come back and they'll do voiceover for certain scenes, like the character will be off screen, but you'll hear their voice talking and whatever. But they're not filming any new scenes, just going to be CG and just going to be additional voiceover. So,
I wonder if Aries Spears is going to get hired for voiceover. He does the voice, people's celebrity voices pretty well.
You know, you'd be surprised. Like a lot of people think that when they watch movies that it is the actor that's playing the role. If they're not showing the actor's face, it's usually a body double. Like, sorry to break people, when you see an actor's butt, not their face, probably not really the actor. And you know how often I see work for voice doubles being like, well, we can't get the actor to do this scene because their contract's already ended, so we're going to put in a body double and get somebody to match their voice.
What?
All the time.
And you think that Star Wars, when you're not privy to that information, you think that Star Wars is just something that happens every so often. Man. I wonder, but that leads me to wonder what the guy's voice sounded like. Like, why not just let him speak as Darth Vader? They went and got James Earl Jones to do the voice acting for him. Maybe his voice wasn't strong enough. He had the size, but maybe his voice wasn't strong enough for what they were looking for.
Yeah, Yeah. But it's funny to me, like, you know, working in television, working in movies, when I know what the person's body double looks like and I know what the actor looks like. Because
Yeah.
watching these movies, because I'd be like, well, that's John. Now it's back to Bill. Now it's back to John. Now, whose voice was that? Because I know that's not John's voice. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, so just like with me with pro wrestling, right? You know, I've been in there, I know everything, but I can step back and sit back and watch as a fan and enjoy it. But then there's always the part of me that's critiquing a little bit like, man, why do you take the bump that way? Ooh, goodness, what are you trying to do? Kill him? Like, yeah, yeah. Well, this has been another edition of the Ding Zang Zoom podcast, episode 18, Quarantine 5. We'll see you next time. Farewell.
Peace.